Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody back to Alabama Care. And today we are at the Ability Clinic at United Ability, and we have a number of guests with us here today. We have Mrs. Lynn Roebuck, who is the lead speech language pathologist, Marliese Delgado, who is the lead physical therapist and outpatient clinic coordinator. We have Marie Beta, who is also a physical therapist and a parent. I get that correct?
You did.
Awesome. And Mr. Philip Crane, who is an intern and a graduate student. But at this point, I'd like to hand it back over. Mrs. Beta, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Marie Beta, and I have a daughter. Her name is Sarah Catherine, and she has attended the United Ability Clinic since she was probably 2 years old. And now she is almost 12, so about 10 years we've been here getting services from the clinic.
Yeah, so this is really kind of home base outside of home for your daughter.
It is. We are very close to everyone here.
How did you hear about United or Ability Clinic?
Well, it's a small world. So I was in physical therapy school, and I did my internship at United Ability. And so I got to know Lynn and Marliese back then, 20-something years ago. And then it turns out that I had a daughter with a disability that needed the services.
Yeah.
So I knew exactly where to go.
It's amazing how much an internship can kind of open those doors. We did a broadcast with Lakeshore 2 weeks ago, and a number of the individuals that work at Lakeshore said they started off as an internship. So I always give that shout out for anybody going through college or working in high school wanting to get into the field. That's how you get your foot in the door there.
And we have a preschool next door, and we have a program in the summer for teenagers. And we've had some of the teenagers who have come through that program later on be parents who have had a child with a disability that have used our services.
Yeah.
So it is a very, very small world.
They have that base
Full
knowledge
circle.
there.
Yeah, that's how they found out about us.
It's a full circle.
And it's great in high school because you have to, in a lot of high schools, you have to get community involvement hours. So it works out for all parties involved.
Yeah.
Mrs. Roebuck, if you would introduce yourself.
My name is Lynn Roebuck, and I'm a speech language pathologist, and I've been here at United Ability for about 24 years.
Okay, so quite a bit going around here.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Delgado, if you would introduce yourself.
I'm Marliese Delgado, and I'm a physical therapist here. I work in our preschool and in our outpatient clinic, and I've been here for 25 years.
So you guys started right around the same time.
Yeah.
You two thick as thieves, I
we
bet,
share an
around here.
office.
Yes, we share an office.
Very
Yeah.
You got to keep these two under wraps.
You're not the first person to say that.
And Mr. Crane, if you would introduce yourself.
I'm Phil Crane. I'm a grad student at Troy in their MPHA program, and I actually grew up using the United Ability's services in their ability clinic. As I said, I came here as a disabled kid, getting services and stuff like that. So that was my familiarity with it when I was trying to figure out my internship from MPHA.
Yeah, and I bet it's cool to see like the leaps and bounds that United Ability has had since you've received services here and how it's
I
changed.
said it's been really, I just kind of watched it grow from afar, and so it's kind of been cool to come back and see a lot of the people that I interacted with growing up, either as therapists, here and elsewhere, and it's like, oh, hey, you're here now, and you kind of run into them again. So it's kind of a very familiar, like others have said, it's a very small world when it comes to disability and disability services. So.
And I bet it's awesome for the professionals to see what you've been able to do and continue to do here, kind of reinforce, all the good that United Ability does. If there's one thing you had to pick out that you're like, I wish we had this back in the day that is now here, is there something that sticks out?
Not really. I mean, I said it's been a while since I've been back getting service. It's been a couple years now, and so I saw more one side versus the other, and so I'm not totally. I said I'm learning more in the last few days. I've been here about a week, and I've learned more in the last week about what all they do than I knew, even in 20 years of receiving services. So.
I think that's something that kind of goes underappreciated sometimes, is all the work that goes behind the services that are there for individuals and families. A lot of times it may boil down to like a 1 hour a week meeting or something like that, but all the work that goes in behind that, the training, the organization, the tools. So it's cool to see the other side of that.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'd like to open it up for anybody that's unfamiliar with the Ability Clinic. The Ability Clinic is under United Ability, And I'm familiar with United Ability. I have a family member, she's 57, and she did a number of outpatient services at the Link Point Center, communication therapy, that kind of stuff, and continues to see her cerebral palsy doctor there at the Link Point Center. I am not familiar with the Ability Clinic at all. This is my first time here. So what exactly is the Ability Clinic for anyone that's unfamiliar?
Well, the Ability Clinic houses sort of two interrelated but separate programs. We have a medical clinic that has, at this point, 3 different doctors who rotate through for services here. We have a rehab physician, and we have another pediatrician who comes through, and then another doctor who sees kids who have maybe behavioral issues, or the parents think that they might have a diagnosis of autism. So we have those 3 kind of distinctive doctors, and the pediatrician who comes here sees kids who have rehab issues. So it's that type of pediatrician. That's what we're doing now with the clinic upstairs. And downstairs in our clinic, we have physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. We have a very small clinic. We do have a waiting list, but we see kids from birth through age 14. We're a little different from other clinics. One, because of our size, we're small, but we're very holistic. Our therapists we work closely together, making sure that our goals are kind of aligned. We work closely with the families. We want the families involved, not only with setting goals, but in on the sessions. We want the families to be able to carry out the things that we're working on in their homes, because if you are coming in once a week or twice a week, which kind of depends on what your child needs, if we can't delegate it to you, your progress is going to be a lot slower. So we like a lot of involvement, and sometimes we'll co-treat. Sometimes PT and speech will work together, or PT and OT.
Mm-hmm. It's not like you can drop your kid off here for an hour a week and expect crazy results. And I think that happens you can't go to practice 1 hour a week and expect to excel at a high level. And there also times is disconnect between receiving services and then those continuing at home, which you'll see a lot of times with teachers, like, the homework assignment, and then the parents don't reinforce, you have to continue doing this work at home. I think it's very important to get the family involved there. I would like to comment on the word clinic. I hear that word and it's in the Ability Clinic, but being here, it feels more like a preschool than a clinic. When I hear clinic, I think of more doctor's office, and yes, those services are available here, but the community and the feel that I get from being here is very open and unclinical. I always want to describe it as a school.
We like that environment of education, and like she was saying, that family training is an integral part of what we do, but we also learn so much from the parents and the families. It's just an exchange of information on both sides. But yeah, the feel of it is more educational, maybe less medical. Yeah.
I mean, no, you guys can't see it, but there's a huge playground behind me here, and kids are, having a blast in the background.
Yeah.
So I love to see it.
Well, we do share a playground with the preschool.
Yeah.
Our building is in sort of a U shape, and in the center is a large playground, which outpatient shares with preschool. We also have a large nature trail that runs all over our campus, and you run into all kinds of different people when you're using that. So we don't stay in those clinic rooms that we have. We use all of our facilities.
And you mentioned that there are individuals here who receive services, but also some that don't receive services. So there's a good mix of kids playing together that have different levels of abilities, which I think is really cool. So even if you're looking for a preschool, you can come here and guarantee that your child gets to interact with all different abilities and all different students. I think that's really important because we take that with us as we grow up. I think a lot of the times we'll have conversations where we feel frustrated in the disability community that others aren't picking up on stuff.
Right.
But I think that's just a lack of awareness. And if you can get that awareness at such a young age where kids are just playing together, I think that carries through. Mr. Crane, would you like to kind of add anything there?
I would like to add something. Oh, sorry.
Please.
I was just going to say, when I was an intern here years ago, I had already vowed to myself that my children were going to go here as typical children.
Yeah.
So because I got to see how much the typical kids learned like empathy and compassion and communication in a different way. And there were so many worlds that were open to them. And so I had already said my typical kids are going to go to United Ability when I have children. I mean, I wasn't even married at the time. And then it turns out that my fourth daughter ended up she went to the school for a little while when she was 2. So it was just a full circle moment again of it does teach you so much to be a typical child in this kind of environment. And now my own children, they live with it. So they didn't have to experience it at school. So they learned all those basic.
Everybody benefits. My son, who's a typically developing child, he's in high school now, but he went to school here. And he really benefited because the world is filled with all different types of people. And you really need to learn to interact with everybody if you're really going to be successful. So because he went to school here, it was always funny to me whenever he was out in the community, if he saw a kid in a wheelchair or walker, he assumed he knew him and he would run right up to him and talk to him. And he's still like that. It was just so ingrained at a young age that he just really doesn't care about that. It changed his brain. And I think I can't even measure how much that's going to help him in his future life. Now he volunteers here as part of his high school, but that is not something that is a chore to him. He loves coming up here.
Yeah, and other people feed off of that, which is really cool. I'd like to talk a little bit, maybe if a parent is watching and they're having some questions about whether their child is developing at a process that the doctors or the schools say should. What are some things that they might notice that would want them to reach out to the Ability Clinic?
Well, I'll speak as far as communication. We serve individuals that have varying degrees of communication, and we serve little ones who are nonverbal or have very difficult time communicating verbally. We use a lot of augmentative communication in this environment. There's a lot of kids that we serve that have complex communication needs. In the preschool, which that's also called hand-in-hand early learning program, just to put that in there, and in the Ability Clinic, which we were talking about earlier. So yeah, if you're concerned about the communication development of your child, you can certainly call the Ability Clinic, and we can get an evaluation for speech and language communication. And that number is 205-944-3921.
Now, what are some of the things that a parent might be going through emotionally, Mrs. Beta, at that point? Questions that you have, and what does that process look like reaching out to the clinic?
So emotionally, usually I would say a parent needs to go with what their gut is telling them. So if you feel like in your gut that something's not right, even if your pediatrician is saying, just give her time, just give him time, everyone develops differently. But if your heart and your gut is saying, no, something's wrong here, then I would definitely take the first step and make the call, because the earlier that you get therapeutic intervention, the better their prognosis is going to be. These kids, I just wholeheartedly believe in early intervention and getting therapy services as fast as possible.
Yeah.
That's when their brain is developing, that's when the connections are formed, and that's when you're probably going to get to see more progress if you catch it early. So
I love the go with your gut there. I was talking with my grandmother. So I moved to Alabama 5 years ago to help out with my family. My grandparents were aging, and also my aunt, who is nonverbal. Her structure and her living environment had to keep going. One thing that my grandmother brought up to me, and it was the very first interview I ever did, was with my grandparents. Even before we got the grant from ACDD, I didn't even know we were going to do this, but I wanted to have their story recorded, and it was just the audio. We didn't even have cameras at that point. It was just me with a couple microphones. But she said that early on in my aunt's life, she noticed that she would always throw up when breastfeeding, when eating, and the doctors would say, she'd grow out of that kind of stuff. But she had that gut feeling that you talk about, and she, kept pushing forward with trying to get services. And, this was back in '65, so the services were a little bit different back then. But yeah, she preaches early intervention as well, and I think that's a big part of it. And the statistics say the earlier that you do receive those services, the better off you'll be for it.
Well, and something that both of them touched on is, we have several different programs here, and they all have different names. So I'd encourage anyone who's interested to go to our website, because it talks about all of our programs. But we have another program called Early Intervention, the Hand in Hand Early Intervention Program, and that's for children birth through age 3. And that program is it's funded by a state program, and in that program, we have therapists and other early intervention providers who will go out to your home and help you work with your child and show you what to do. And that is of no cost to the individuals. So that's also a good place to start if you think that that something is just not quite right, or your child's muscles are too stiff or too floppy, or they're not looking at you, or whatever, if they're not feeding correctly, or any of those things. You can start with early intervention, and you can be in more than one of our programs at a time. You can be in our early intervention program, and you can be in our preschool program, and you can be in our outpatient program. I'm not saying you have to be in everything, but you have multiple options. Early intervention is just a nice place to start because it's at no cost to a family, and they'll screen a child in all areas of development as part of their entry into their program.
It seems like such a thing that you would do in that situation. Are you guys at capacity?
Certain programs are.
Yeah.
Early intervention has openings most of the time. And our early intervention program is not just in Jefferson County, we're also in Blount and St. Clair County. So we're in other areas there.
Yeah.
Outpatient, PT, we have a waiting list. Speech, we have a little bit of a waiting list. Occupational therapy, we have a huge long waiting list. So it just depends. Preschool has a waiting list as well.
It's good to have those waiting
Oh
lists.
yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
But I would encourage people, go ahead and get on the waiting list. You never know.
Yeah. What might happen there? What do you think would be a reason that a family, or, I know a lot of times a lot of this falls onto the mom's shoulders, is what I see in the community. Our audience are primarily female, but why do you think a family or a mom wouldn't call in?
I mean, my biggest guess would be they would be afraid that their concerns are real.
Yeah.
That would be really the only thing I could think of as to why they wouldn't call, or if they just didn't have, the resources, they didn't know about us, or didn't know about, the resources out there to help their child. That might be the only reason. Can y'all think of anything else?
I can.
Go ahead.
I mean, there's still a stigma associated with disability and disability diagnosis, and parents are still. I hear it all the time. Parents are still. They try to, unfortunately, for lack of a better word, force their kid to not be disabled, and they're so afraid of it that they try and make them be typical, and that's detrimental to the kid. It's detrimental to the parent-child relationship, but they do try and do it, and it's unfortunate, but it happens.
Mr. Crane, when did you start receiving services at United Ability?
I probably received services in some form. I mean, I'm 30 now, so I probably received some form of services, 28 years ago when I first got diagnosed.
Yeah.
But I really started receiving services outpatient, because I had a backup pump for 20 some odd years, and so I received outpatient services here for that.
Yeah.
And so that was 2 years worth of services. So
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
I'm so happy that you're here doing your internship. I think it's really cool, that full circle that we're talking about.
I was lucky to have contact when I needed to do my internship, and it had to be in nonprofit or government. And I really want to work with the disabled community and help navigate some of the transitional issues that currently exist between pediatrics and the adult world. And so I had some contacts here because of receiving services for 20 years. And so that was kind of an easy, it was a known entity and an easy find. So
I know that continuum of care has been a topic for the community here in Alabama for a number of years. I know that UAB and USET are doing some things about that. But while we're on the topic of age, what is the age group that the Ability Clinic can provide services up to?
Well, we say that we provide services up to age 14, and that's our entry point. So if you come to us, we accept kids in up to age 14. But if we're already serving somebody and they're 14, then it's a case-by-case basis, because it really depends on the equipment that we have. I've seen many kids who are older. It's just because once I knew them and I had a relationship with them, I kind of knew what equipment I had. We do have an adult facility which sees adults. So there is a little bit of a gap there, but as I said, it's kind of it's highly variable.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, my 20-year relationship with the Ability Clinic was because my physician was here and based here, and so that was where he was, and he was the only doc in this that could do it at least outpatient that way. So that was kind of the connection. It wasn't some clandestine. Let's sneak Mr. Crane in. It was
I'm talking about the therapy part.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
talking about the medical part.
Yeah.
Because our medical services, it goes up. There's not a cap on the age. That goes up through.
Okay. Well, like I said, my family member, she's 57,
Yeah.
receives services through Dr. Powell. It used to be Dr. Oh, he just retired, and now Dr. Powell's in there. I forget his name.
Yeah, we have Powell, and then we have, like I said, 3 others here.
Yeah.
But we're experimenting with that model, so.
But there is a disconnect while we're talking about that. I see a lot of it aging out of the education system as well. Going to school, and then at 19 or 21, whichever happens there, a lot of times, the son or the daughter will move home full time, and then a lot of that becomes the family responsibility. And that causes a lot of stress. It's a stress factor for the family at that point. I have a lot of families that I reach out and say, how did your grandparents manage that for your aunt transitioning from the institution to her own home? And we have a lot of conversation about that, but I always recommend, get involved with your local communities, and you have to have another family that did the transition successfully. Start at 14 thinking and preparing about that. What does that look like after? Those are tough conversations to have, but get in the conversation.
Yeah, and we have, on our campus, we have our adult facility, which has an adult day program, which houses many other services. They have a job training program. They have Gone for Good, which does secure document destruction. They have contracts with businesses all over town, and that particular business hires people with disabilities, and it's housed right here. We have many, many programs for adults.
It's almost, if you're comfortable and this is the right place to be, you could be here from birth and receiving services and doing things and building the community all the way through to however, you want to be.
Yeah, for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
The Ability Clinic was created. It was our most recent creation, I guess. I don't know. But we used to serve kids up to 5 years of age. When Marliese and I started 20-something years ago, that was the cutoff. And then they went to the school system. And for the longest time, parents would say, hey, I really would like some outpatient therapy for my 7-year-old, my 8-year-old, my 10-year-old. Things are happening at all ages, at school age. So that's when we created the Ability Clinic. Mm-hmm. I think Marie and I have talked about extending that beyond 14. Wouldn't that be a dream? So maybe there are talks about that, we hope, cross our fingers. But yeah, and then we have our wonderful adult link point that starts at 21. So just trying to fill that gap and help families. That's what we're trying to do.
If you guys are throwing around new ideas, I'd like to throw in a dentist.
Oh, yes.
It is extremely hard to find dentists, and even I think that should be covered under insurance, is not.
Well, we've had partnerships before with UAB's dental school, and we've had them come over and see adults over at Link Point.
That's amazing.
And so they have done that before. And then I don't know where it stands right now, but I'm sure they're looking at bringing that back.
Yeah, my aunt goes to UAB Sparks Dental Clinic, which is, kind of where the students get a lot of their training, that stuff. But I hear that sometimes throughout the community it's tough to get. My aunt hates going to the dentist.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a very painful process for her. She doesn't like people in her mouth, and she will bite you.
Yeah. Right.
Get away from me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's tough finding people, dentists that can really understand her ability and what she needs. I would like to talk a little bit. So if someone's thinking about enrolling here, what does that look like? What is the intake process? They just call up, and then what happens?
Well, I think it depends on which program. Early intervention has a very specific protocol. So you would call and somebody would call you back, and over the phone, they would walk you through the process. For outpatient, you call up and talk to the receptionist and then email you a packet. For Link Point, I think it's very specific as well, because that is also part of a bigger program, part of the state program, and I may be misspeaking for part of that, but for Link Point, I would just suggest that they contact Link Point directly. Again, all that information's on the website and find out about it. But we have so many programs here that you really have to contact each program separately.
And don't forget to go to the website, and under the tabs of programs, there will be a tab for Ability Clinic, and that will connect you to OT, PT, and speech, and give you the phone number and the email to get enrolled or get the information across.
And I feel like sometimes the family could be a little bit nervous, is like you're kind of being interviewed. Can you get in? Is it an SAT score?
Oh, no.
That kind of stuff. But so Mrs. Beta, was it a very welcoming experience coming and being a part?
Of course, it was a very welcoming experience. They were wonderful, and their main priority is the child, and they would serve everybody if they could serve everybody. If they had the ability to serve, if they had the manpower to do it, they would not turn anybody away, because I know their hearts, and I know that every person that walks in these doors turns into family for them. So yes, it's a very welcoming process. You feel at home. They make it quite comfortable for you and my siblings that I would bring along, all these children, because I have 5 kids. So everybody's welcome. And I guess one of my favorite parts is the fact that they kind of sort of become your counselors in life, and they just help us navigate just the silliest things. How do you get her in the car, or how do you get her in the bathtub, and the things that you don't really think about, like who's going to really help me do that. These ladies are here to do that, and they have so many resources that they can offer that they send us out into the community to find. So once you're here, you're never going to want to leave.
It does become, it's a family, and we end up going by somebody's house because they're having a problem with something. And I have a little boy that I work with in outpatient. I've worked with him for years, and he has a prosthetic, and he was doing great in outpatient, but he was having problems in his bathroom getting in and out. Well, I can't problem solve that here.
Yeah.
So I went to his house, and we problem solved it at his house. There's multiple times.
Yes,
Lynn's gone
come to my house.
Marie's house for issues.
Yes.
And one thing I love is she mentioned Suki is her daughter. Suki's siblings. I love including those siblings because communication with your siblings is huge. And Suki does use a device, and that's hard. That's not always intuitive or natural. So working with those siblings and trying to make that exchange easier, we love to do that sort of thing. Now, COVID has kind of gotten in our way a little bit, but when things run again, siblings are welcome to come into the therapy sessions along with the parents and the child that we're serving.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. I would like to get specific on that bathroom. So what was the outcome of that?
Well, because when you have a prosthetic, you take it off when you're getting in the bath. So this was somebody who you could easily get in and out of that sort of situation with the leg on, but without it, you couldn't. So we really were problem solving. What are things that we could add to the bathtub? So we were able to come up with places where she could add bars and get real creative, because none of the standard things work.
Yeah.
It just makes me mad when people say, oh, it's ADA accessible. That means nothing to me because every wheelchair is different, every person is different, every disability is different. So we just got really creative with, and I would pretend that I was the bar, and I would hold my arm, and he would hold on to me, and we would practice with his leg off, getting in and out multiple times of his bathtub in that small space. So we practiced it to make it work there.
Yeah.
And you also have kids with sensory issues, and they might learn how to do something here. On another occasion, I had a child who learned how to walk here, and he would walk here, but he wouldn't walk at home.
Oh, really?
So once he learned to walk here, then I went to his house and walked with him at his house, and then he would walk there.
You got to be in the environment.
Yeah, go
Mr.
ahead.
Green.
I can attest to two things that they discussed. One, the fact that ADA accessible doesn't necessarily mean functional for the individual. And there's so many times when somebody will say, well, it's ADA, it's accessible. And it's like, well, except the way that you've designed it, the bathroom door, the public bathroom door stall won't close because it's accessible, but my chair is slightly bigger than the typical, and so when you go to close it, it doesn't close. So yeah, there's definitely a disconnect between ADA accessible and functional. But then I can really attest to the connection that pediatric PTs have to their clients. While I didn't fully receive services here for that, I still have my pediatric therapy or pediatric therapist in my cell phone. I have their cell number. I'm not the only patient that has that number, because we all know that if we ever have anything go wrong, they're one of the few people in the world, and it applies here as well, that understand us as well as we understand ourselves. Mm-hmm. Because, trying to explain to a new doctor or a new PT, oh, I've got this going on, and that doesn't, it's hard for new people to walk in not knowing your history, mm-hmm. not knowing your, what your current ability is or whatever. And that pediatric therapist, so often, because they're so connected and so caring and so all that, they truly do keep up with you. And they know, okay, this is where they're at, this is what they can do. And they work with you there. Even, I'm 30 now, and like I said, I still have that number. And I know if I text her and said, hey, I've got a problem with this, what do you think I should do? They'd probably know the answer.
Yeah. Or they'll work to help you find the
answer.
answer.
Oh yeah. Like I said, they have enough connections. They would know where to point me.
And you guys have both kind of touched on it. It's that friendship that you build over time. And you mentioned kind of counseling and being in that group together. It reminds me when you're talking, I have a teacher from high school that, I was going through a rocky point there, and she kind of stepped in, and I got involved in school, class, officer kind of stuff. And so I still have her number in my phone, so I can relate to that a little bit. And I also want to talk about what you guys mentioned, the ADA accessible versus, what was the word you used? Accessibility versus
functionality.
I thought that was really good. We have a 19-year-old freshman at UAB. Her name is McCartney Hager. She works for Alabama Care, and she does her own broadcast on our channel. And her broadcast yesterday was a story about accessibility on airplanes. And she,
that's a big issue.
Yeah, and she uses a wheelchair, and she was going over, I think it was in 2019, something like 19 wheelchairs a day were being lost in air travel.
30.
It's
30. They're either lost or broken.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest issues within the disability community. There actually is currently there's legislation technically in place, but airlines so rarely care, to be honest. They see chairs or medical equipment in general as just that. It's medical equipment, it's luggage. It's not, when it comes to a wheelchair or a walker or something like that, it's for lack of a better phrase, it's our legs. And so if you break it, you've made somebody, you've taken away their ability to move through the world.
Yeah.
And so what we've had, it's been a rash. There's been a rash of it, and then with social media, it's a lot easier for people to get the word out.
To speak about it.
This is an issue, and so there's a push within disability and the disability community to make airlines more accessible, but there's a push back from the airlines because they don't want to put forth the funds and the effort to actually do that. I'm sure McCartney has spoke on it. She's probably more versed on it than I am at the moment. But I said I know some portion of that issue, and I've dealt with it myself. I'll never forget. I've had people try to essentially steal my chair because people don't realize the difference between an airline, like airport chair that is used to transport people through the airport, and your own personal chair. And so people will exit the plane and my chair will be sitting there and they will just take it. And then it's like, luckily I said usually I'm traveling with somebody and they'll flag me and go, no, that is not just a chair to take. That is somebody's chair. But the airlines so frequently, they kind of don't do enough. I said, so yeah, that's definitely an issue.
That's what she was kind of saying. And there was an activist that had her own wheelchair that passed away.
Yeah, she. I remember the story, and I can expound on it. Her chair was broken. It was a specially made chair that was fitted to her body, like all chairs are, at least of that quality. And they broke it. She was forced to use a backup chair or a chair that was not well fitted to her. She developed pressure sores from that, having to use that chair, and as a result of the pressure sores, she eventually was hospitalized and died.
Yep.
And it's a very tragic, and I wish I could remember her name, because she was a fantastic activist, but I said
So that's what we did. She did her own broadcast on yesterday,
Yeah.
and it really brought the point, like the difference in the chairs and the difference in adaptive equipment, and how individually you guys work with the individual to make that their equipment, their chair. And you hear it when Mr. Crane speaks. And I've had the opportunity to sit in a sport chair before with Mr. Bob Luhano over at Lakeshore. He is on the bronze Paralympic wheelchair rugby team. And so we did a broadcast on how to play wheelchair, and those things zip. But then if I sit in like my aunt's chair, it's a totally different chair.
Yeah, I said I actually have both. I played wheelchair basketball with Auburn University for a decade or 7 years, a 7-year starter and co-founder of that program. And so I've sat in both, and they're totally different experiences, as you touched on. And so it's really, but when it comes to everyday chairs, it truly is finding the right fit, and PTs and OTs and seating specialists that I'm sure Unitedability has a ton of. They do a lot. It really does matter. I can tell you from my own personal experience that sitting in a chair that is not as well fitted, and then sitting in one that is perfectly fitted for you, it makes a massive difference, both in your comfort, but in your functionality. Because so much of your ability to move, at least as a chair user, to move through the world it's not just, oh, well, you've got, XYZ on your chair, but it's, can you move it? Can you move it the way you want it to move? And does it respond to you? And like I said, that is an individual experience. There's no, everyone goes, oh, just buy the chair at, Rite Aid or whatever it is, and that's not going to ever cut it. Both because those chairs weigh a lot more than the typical manual chair does, and that doesn't even get into power chairs, which are their own specialty and beyond. They do so many things with those now that they're amazing. But I said it really does matter, fit and stuff like that.
And that's something here at the Ability Clinic that you guys will do. It's not like it's going to happen off the first time that you try out a chair or an adapted piece of equipment, but it's an ongoing process.
Well, insurance won't just let you order a chair for a child. It depends on the chair, but for like a power chair, as he mentioned, as a therapist, I have to prove that a child can use it before I can actually order it for them. So I have to have one first. So I have some, and I have to do a trial with a child and have them use it. And we're actually in the process of doing one now, because power chairs can run from I don't know what the cheapest one would be, around $30,000, maybe $20,000, $30,000, and they'll go up. I don't know what the top end is. I think a middle of the road might be around $40,000 or $50,000, but this is for a 3-year-old I'm talking about. I don't know what they go up to for adults. So insurance companies want to make sure that they can activate it. And the communication devices start at, I don't know.
Well, $2,000, $2,500 to all the way up to $30,000 for augmentative communication
These are
systems.
for little kids.
Yeah.
So we have to prove that they can use these things. So we have them. So as a nonprofit, we had to raise money so that we could purchase these items first. And the paperwork it takes for us to justify these is not billable. I cannot bill your insurance company for the 7 or 10 pages it takes to justify a power wheelchair. That is time that I have to do that elsewhere. But because we're a nonprofit, United Ability raises money so that I still can get paid for that time and Lynn can get paid for that time.
Yeah. Mrs. Beta, I was just going to ask, it looked like you were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say along the same lines, my daughter doesn't use a wheelchair. She is a walker, but the same thing applies for communication devices, and finding the right one for your child takes some time. She started out with a paper flip book that she used, a partner-assisted method where the partner would just scan different, pages, and she would give you a yes or no with her head, her body language. But then we evolved, and Lynn spent a lot of time helping us figure out which communication device would be the best for her. And if you don't have the right one, then they're not going to, have access to their world in the way that they should. And so I feel like Lynn knows probably hundreds of languages, because on these communication devices, there's so many different languages, systems that you could use, and she has to learn all of them to communicate with our children. So
They're very individualized, just like chairs. I mean, you want and it is a part of that person. It is an extension of themselves. It's their voice or their legs, whatever. Yeah.
And what I love about the Ability Clinic, Marliese mentioned it earlier, their interdisciplinary approach to therapy. And so when my daughter is in physical therapy, Marliese has to know how to communicate with her using her device. And so Marliese knows that too, because she collaborates with Lynn.
They share the same office.
Lynn is when Siki's in therapy with Lynn, and she's not in the right chair, she's uncomfortable and banging, she has to ask Marliese, what can I do to make Siki more comfortable? And so they work together a lot to get the most out of each therapy session. And that's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, see that continuum there. And I think it's so important early on in our lives to have that. You build confidence off of that. Confidence for yourself, to be able to speak and advocate and use the tools around you as extensions of who you are to do that. And it seems like you just got to start getting in the funnel. And as soon as you're in the Ability Clinic, birth through 14 there and even beyond, you're going to be taken care of. And it'd be a world of difference if you didn't get involved in something like that. I would like to acknowledge chat here really quick, and then I want to talk a little bit about the cost to the consumer. We were just talking big figures there. And they're all from Heather Sims. Heather Sims is at Disability Rights and Resources, and she says that they can assist during the transition period after high school, even middle school age. And she says, I totally agree with the young man about PT. He's right also about the ADA and functionality. She also says, he's spot on about the airlines too. And she says, fun fact, I was the 86th, 87th UCP poster child.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
It used to be United Cerebral Palsy.
Yep.
Before we changed our name.
yeah, so she was the poster child there for that year. Thank you, Mrs. Sims, for tuning in and being in the chat with us. So we talked about big numbers there, $30,000, $45,000. That's what you would think on spending on a car. And we're talking about doing it in communication devices and in chairs. What are, is there a way, that's a lot of expense for a family. What are some ways that we can help out families there?
Well, insurance usually covers those devices if the therapist takes the time and justifies it correctly.
Also, when you are a new mom and you don't know anything about the disability world, you're kind of in the dark when it comes to Medicare. and
Medicaid.
Medicaid, sorry, I said the wrong thing, Medicaid. And so you really don't even know who to turn to. And so these ladies and then other connections or other therapists, they help you figure out who to talk to and how to get the ball rolling to get that paperwork done so that your child will qualify. And then if your primary insurance doesn't cover it, then Medicaid Medicaid will cover it. So, but as a new mom, you really don't know where to turn, and that's what the clinic helps you.
Yeah, it's the experts there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can attest to the importance of a physical therapist or OT or speech writing their reasoning well. Insurance, unfortunately, loves to deny whatever that you're recommending. They love to deny it. It seems to be their favorite thing, is to stamp no on the top of whatever paper that's run across their desk. So having a therapist, and I can attest to United Ability's quality there of referring and writing the recommendation and the reasoning. It is very important to have that connection. Because like I said, even manual chairs run between $2,000 and $4,000, depending on different aspect of it.
Yeah, and you have
and insurance loves to say, well, we're not going to cover this. And what they don't realize, or what they do realize but don't want to admit, is they're going to have to cover the cost of something at some point in the individual's life. A lot of chairs, a lot of equipment ends up being preventative. It prevents issues down the line, but insurance doesn't really want to admit that. And so if you can get the right fitting chair, the right chair for you, the right communication device, whatever it is, it ends up preventing issues later on.
Yeah, I think, kind of invest early, and I think you'll see that where if you do invest in the services and communication devices, transportation, the confidence there, you have somebody that's wanting to go and get a graduate degree and wanting to work and be, that kind of thing, and just be a productive member of society.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, whether it's communication devices, chairs, walkers, canes, et cetera, it is the way to navigate through the world. And if you don't have those things, you've essentially deprived somebody of that. And United Ability helps people get that, and so that's so important. It just is. I mean, when you don't have it, I said it does end up being an issue at some point.
Yeah. Mrs. Beta, when you said that kind of coming into it, you didn't know, you feel overwhelmed, there's a ton of information out there, but like speaking with the insurance, it reminded me of wanting to learn about something, but not having the right keywords to search on Google. And then I'm just getting a lot of the wrong information or very vague information. But if I call somebody, as I was doing this the other day, it was a coding thing, a programming thing I was wanting to learn a little bit about, and I know nothing about that. So I had to text my buddy and be like, hey, what are some good keywords? And then I went from there and was like, okay, this is exactly what I'm looking for. But to have that expert to be able to rely on and kind of guide me, I think is a big thing there.
And it just being in the clinic connects you to other families. So I got to know other parents who were feeling the same way I felt and going through the same things that I was going through. And then also the families become a resource too for you. And then we become one bigger family. So
a lot of our families have connected on social media, and one family will find a resource and they'll share it with the other families, and they share it with us, and then we share it with other people. So now we kind of have a network of even grants that we know about. And one of our former families has started their own foundation, and they provide funds for other families that need things that insurance doesn't cover.
We did a broadcast with them. That was Hannah Wilson did a broadcast with
Libby's friend.
Libby's
friends. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was
Wonderful
very cool.
family.
Yeah.
What about the cost? So we talked about the equipment. Mr. Crane, were you going to add something there? I apologize.
The Libby's friends. That was what I was adding. So.
Yep. No, they're a great family, and we were very lucky to have them on a broadcast with us. So we talked about offsetting some of the costs through insurance, but what about, is there any out-of-pocket cost to the individual or the family for the Ability Clinic?
So So we accept third-party payment and private pay if your insurance does not cover the services. There is a copay that will be required for each visit, unless that's taken care of by another,
If you have Medicaid.
if you have Medicaid.
If you have Medicaid, there's not.
But we do accept third-party payment and Medicaid. A lot of other clinics may have a cap on how many Medicaid individuals they can serve, but we do not. So that's something here.
Very nice.
Yeah, and then for the kids who are in the preschool, there is a tuition that everybody pays to go to preschool, but there's a very generous scholarship program for kids with disabilities. So if you're interested in the preschool and you look at the fees and you think there's no way you could afford that, just know that if you have a child with a disability, go ahead and enroll them, because there's a very generous scholarship program in place for that as well.
I don't have any children right now, but when I do, I want my children to come here in preschool.
Well, let me suggest, go ahead and put your
I put my firstborn on the waiting list like before she was 2.
yeah, but before my son was born, he was on our list here.
So I think the audience, and when I'm always learning, concrete examples help me kind of anchor the information that we're talking about today. So are there some success stories that you'd like to highlight from the Ability Clinic in the past few years?
I would like to say that we measure success in different ways than maybe even the average person. So I can find success in every single day, in every single session that I have throughout the day. I mean, honestly, these kids and these families are remarkable in different ways and do remarkable things, whether it's just learning a new word, whether it's verbalizing a new word, whether it's taking a new step, whether it's learning how to use a new piece of equipment to make them more independent. It's just, it's a great environment, but that's every day is there's some success in that.
And sometimes it's things that you wouldn't think about that Philip touched on. I mean, sometimes it's just having a mom who finally gets to the point where they say, okay, I'm ready to order that wheelchair for my child. I can do that now. Sometimes that's success.
Yeah, that's daily success like you're talking about. And we have 2 success stories right in front of us, the Beta family and Mr. Crane.
Yeah, I was going to say that Sarah Catherine had a success story this year. Marliese has worked with her since she was 2, and then as she got older, she didn't need her as much, but we would check in maybe during the summer a few times. Marliese checks to make sure, she's not getting too tight or her orthotics are fitting, making sure she's still, heading up with her strength. And so for a long time, we've worked on going up and down the stairs independently, and Sarah Catherine needs assistance to go up and down the stairs. She can't do it independently. But this past year during COVID, she went up 11 stairs by herself independently, which was miraculous, and it's a huge success story. And so now she does it when she wants to, but the fact that she can do it at all is a huge success. And, it took us 10 years, but we did it.
Yeah. That's a year for each step almost.
It's huge. It was huge, yes.
Yeah.
So,
That's a big one.
We never give up on kids.
No.
Just because they're not doing it today or tomorrow or next year doesn't mean they're never going to do it. So we're always going to encourage them. That doesn't mean we need to see them weekly for the next 10 years, but we're always going to hope that they're going to do the next thing. We're always just looking at the next benchmark, and we're working towards that with the family. Look, we don't have unlimited funds or unlimited time, but we have unlimited compassion for families of kids with disabilities and people with disabilities, and we are here for them.
Mr. Crane.
Well, I was just adding the personal experience, random success, for lack of a better word. So I tell this story. It took my PT 18 years to teach me the proper way to roll over, because I have CP, and so my brain figured out a way that got me. I rolled over, but she always like, "You're gonna break your arm," because I would like throw my body weight onto one arm and like pivot over like a thing. It's just like, you're going to break your arm one day. You're going to break your arm one day. You're going to break your arm one day. Well, eventually I actually did break my arm. Not rolling over, thank goodness. But I was actually playing wheelchair basketball and fell and ended up breaking my arm that way. But as a result of that, it forced me to learn the proper way to roll over. And I can still remember my therapist that day when I did. She's like, it only took me 18 years to teach you how to roll over. But by God, I'm going to take the success when I get it. So it was kind of, talking about the little things that they see as therapists and as parents. It was definitely, I just remember that moment. Even now, a dozen years later, it's like, that they do see it, they do remember it, and they truly care. So, yeah.
Yep, we've had hundreds and hundreds of kids learn to hold their heads up in this clinic, learn to walk, take their first steps downstairs, say their first words, eat the first solid food they've ever eaten in their life, or use their hands to cut or to put a shirt on for the first time. It happens all the time.
These may be things that maybe the parents or the family thinks will never happen.
Yeah, or they're told at birth they will never happen.
Yeah. So they like the 11 steps. That may be something that's crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Crane, I'd like to ask, are you still doing the rugby and basketball?
I'm still playing basketball, yes. I said I graduated from Auburn in 2000. Well, I finished playing for Auburn in 2017. I finished up my first master's then, and so I now play for a local team it's actually out of Auburn and Montgomery. So I play for them, but yeah, I said I grew up playing for Lakeshore, so I know Bob. Yeah. Bob and I go way back.
Are you playing in the upcoming SEC tournament in March?
No.
Okay.
I said no. That was no. So.
We're hoping to do a broadcast there. We've never done like a live event sports broadcast. Mr. Gary Pate, who is a broadcaster for the Paralympics, is going to join us. And I'm going to be like, what are they doing right now? And he's going to tell me. He's going to kind of show me what it's all about.
So that is a different, I said, I actually because of COVID, I'm kind of taking the last 2 years off just because of COVID risk and not wanting to put myself out there in that situation. So.
For sure, definitely understand. Well, as we kind of wrap things up today, I'd like to ask, are there any upcoming events, whether that's online or here in person at the Ability Clinic, that you would recommend individuals or families get involved in?
David, do we have any?
We have our regular, we have a family event that's coming up at the end of April, Journey of Hope, which is going to be
we have
August 20th. But as far as clinic events, those are always scheduled by the different departments and therapists.
Yes. So mainly, if they check the website.
Yeah, go to the website for upcoming. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think an individual or a family could benefit from hearing? Kind of a wrap up. Well, I would say get on the phone if you're thinking about getting involved and make the call. If you have a son or a daughter who you think isn't progressing as fast as they should, make the call. Get in the funnel, become a part of the team, become a part of the family.
There's nowhere like United Ability in the city. Nowhere.
There's nowhere like United Ability in the Southeast.
Okay.
Factually, there's nowhere else in the Southeast like United Ability. There's only a couple in the country, but there's nowhere else in the Southeast. So.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for being here and spending some of the morning with us and spreading the knowledge of what Ability Clinic does and is going to do in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you guys can each wave at your respective cameras. And we'll say, see you next time, guys.
Bye.